Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here. Happy Friday. Today we have a little bit of Tesla news. It should be a pretty quick episode though, as a relatively light news day. We've got an update on the Cybertruck, a little bit of a sneak peek on what the Frunk might look like, as well as the Wiper in action. We've also got price cuts in Europe, some news on a new Tesla energy entity, and a few other items as well. All right, looking at the stock, Tesla today down about 0.5%, maybe influenced a bit by options, closing at exactly $185 even for the day, while the NASDAQ was down about 1/3%. All right, so being Friday, we'll start off with the exciting news of the Cybertruck. So Gregor Truck on Twitter here posting a little bit of a, I don't know if this is like a spy shot or if this is coming from, doesn't really look like a drone footage shot, but a leaked image here of the Cybertruck doing some wind tunnel testing. And as a part of that, it seemed like they had the Frunk open at least for some short period of time here. And we can see, based on this shot, I know it is a little bit low resolution, but it looks pretty clearly like there is a hinge there at the base of the windshield, and then it is seeming to include the entire sort of front bumper there with the headlights and everything as the opening for the Frunk. So if we look at how that compares to the prototype, the production beta prototype that we saw at Investor Day, shouldn't be too surprising, as we had previously talked about. Pretty significant seams here. So basically what we'd be looking at, presumably based off of this shot, would be this entire section opening up to a huge and glorious front trunk or Frunk for the Cybertruck. That little gap that is there is even a little bit more visible on this other side. You could call that a panel gap if you want. Again, this is just a beta prototype for Tesla, so shouldn't be too harsh on those things. But as we can see there, that indicates that there may be some opening potential, and with this new image, that sure seems like what we're going to get. So this would be a similar style to the Ford F-150's front trunk. So I think Tesla, obviously wanting to be on par or even better than their competitive set for their feature set, which is a great thing. And I'm really excited to see this thing in action. This should actually even be, if this design is, what we're thinking it is, should actually be even a little bit more room than what the F-150 the Ford F-150 Lightning has. So I don't know what the cubic foot estimate for that would be, but given the size of the vehicle, there's going to be a lot of room there to store plenty of stuff in addition to the bed of the vehicle. Obviously get the benefit of the weather protection there, even if you don't have the tonneau cover down. So exciting on that. And then for the windshield, we've got a new video from Brad Sloan, did a drone flyover of Giga Texas, and we get to see the windshield wiper in action here. So let's just play that clip. It's a windshield wiper. It's what you would expect, but it is fun to see it in action a little bit there, again, in some of that wind tunnel or weather testing that Tesla's got going on. So, I know a lot of people have pretty significant feelings on the windshield wiper, which we can see a little bit of a glimpse at here if we go back. But personally, when I saw it in person, I didn't really mind it too much. I think it integrates well with the vehicle. It's got sort of that utility, heavy-duty look to it that matches the Cybertruck. So, it's not something that I minded on the design. All right, let's move on from the Cybertruck. Next, we do have pricing changes in Europe. So this follows the price cuts that we had talked about in North America a little bit earlier on. And we're seeing a larger range. Obviously, Tesla changes prices by country in Europe, so it's a little bit more difficult to cover than just the United States with sort of the universal pricing across the country. But we can see a variety of ranges here on Tesla vehicles. We actually have one increase on the long-range Model Y in Norway, but across the board here from the recap by Fun with Numbers, we're seeing 4 to 6% drops most common, and then some of the performance vehicles, looks like the Performance Model 3 with a little bit more significant cuts, maybe up to 9-10% or so in some countries. But in general, again, looks like probably a 4 to 5% cut in terms of what it would do to the average selling price on these countries, or on these vehicles in these countries. So probably not too surprising, given that we have seen similar pricing changes, first in the United States and then in Europe earlier on in the quarter. Tesla kind of keeping these consistent, which makes sense, with production growing rapidly in all markets at this point, for Tesla to continue to cut prices when we already know that the backlog isn't that long. So we've talked about, how this is likely to happen. We'll see how this affects things. These aren't the most significant price cuts, although they are decent. Not quite as big as what we saw back in January. So hopefully the backlog will build a little bit. Tesla can keep these prices for a while. And then again, as Berlin continues to ramp, as Giga Texas continues to ramp, Hopefully Tesla's cost of goods sold are coming down alongside those ramps, and that gives them a little bit more room to continue to do this, which, as we've talked about, I think we're shifting from this period where Tesla was supply constrained and had really no choice but to capture margin to now a period of time where they're a little bit less supply constrained and they're just going to continue to grow production, and whatever price the market supports, Tesla will do that. And that's going to put a ton of pressure on other automakers to keep up, which we'll actually talk about here in a little bit with Lucid and Rivian. All right, aside from that, we do have an update on Tesla Energy. Nothing major here, but Tesla has set up a new energy company in Shanghai. So it's a Tesla subsidiary, nothing that we need to worry about in terms of, how the economic value of Tesla products is being captured by some other company here. This is owned by Tesla, but they've set up a new energy company in China, which apparently, according to filings, focuses on areas such as technical services, artificial intelligence, basic software development, and energy storage technical services. The AI portion of that, probably things like AutoBidder that we've talked about relating to Tesla Energy in the past. The new unit has a registered capital of $2 million, fully funded by Tesla's Hong Kong unit, and the legal representative is Tom Zhu, like we have talked about before on different Tesla entities in China. So again, nothing too major to worry about there, but as Tesla gets the mega factory ramped up, I'm sure that this is just sort of a move that Tesla is making in relation to that. Next, just an FYI, Elon is going to be appearing on the Tucker Carlson show on Fox News tomorrow, or rather on Monday. Looks like that's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern time, so that'd be 5 p.m. Pacific time. So we'll see. I think this may be a 2-part interview. I think I saw that somewhere, but not 100% sure on that. Elon did comment on this. Of course, we had the BBC interview earlier this week. What was that? I think that was earlier this week. But Elon said, I'm doing interviews across the political spectrum. BBC's SF division is quote-unquote left-wing, as evidenced by the questions he asked. Tucker's quote-unquote right-wing. Next week, I'll do interviews with moderate and slightly left media. So I think it's hard to argue against that, but obviously people have strong feelings about this one way or the other, but might be wise to at least withhold some of those feelings until the interview does actually happen. All right, so that's kind of the Tesla stuff, but we do have an interesting update here from Lucid. They've announced their Q1 production and delivery report, essentially. So for the first quarter, they produced 2,300 vehicles and sold about 1,400 vehicles, which without context doesn't mean a whole lot, so let's take a look at that. Blue here is the production for Lucid, basically since the beginning of their production in 2021, towards the end of the year, and then red would be their deliveries. The first couple of production numbers here are estimates, particularly that Q4 2021. Q1 and Q2, we did get the first half production numbers, so these in aggregate are correct. Just the split might, that's just an estimate for me, so that might not be exact. But anyway, you can see that throughout 2022, basically that first, 9 months of production, Lucid was tracking pretty closely in terms of sales or delivered vehicles with production. And then starting to get into Q3 last year, inventory really started to build. And you can see it pretty dramatically just visually, where the area under these lines would be deliveries and then the area between the two lines is growth in inventory. And you're looking at, roughly 50% there. So if we look at these Q1 numbers, you're going from 3,500 vehicles produced in Q4 down to 2,300 vehicles produced in Q1, which I didn't actually do the math on that ahead of time, but we'll just again do some live math here. And that is going to be a 34% decline in production. And then for deliveries, you've got 1,400 deliveries down from 1,900 in the last quarter, so deliveries down 28%, which obviously we've talked about with Tesla, with other automakers. Sequential declines in Q1 aren't unusual, but for a company like Lucid that is still, very early in their growth curve, especially as this production trend would indicate, to see that sharp of a drop sequentially is definitely a concerning sign, especially when it follows this inventory growth that we just talked about. So if you look at the last 3 quarters in aggregate, so the last 9 months or so, Lucid has produced about 8,100 vehicles over that period of time, but they've only delivered 4,700. So they've only delivered 59% of their production over the last 9 months or the last 3 quarters. Inventory right now in aggregate, based off of these production and delivery numbers, it's almost 4,000 vehicles. I got about 3,800 vehicles there, which if you do the same days of supply calculation that we do with Tesla, so taking the quarterly deliveries divided by 75, which is sort of the automotive news recommended or methodology. If you do that calculation for Lucid, That gets us for 16 days of inventory for Tesla. That same calc for Lucid puts their inventory right now at 202 days. And if you are a little bit more forgiving to Lucid on their first quarter numbers and you use their Q4 delivery numbers, it still puts it just above 150 days of inventory. So, obviously that calculation could be a little bit biased for someone that's a little bit earlier in the ramp where production is outpacing deliveries. But since this has been the case now for 9 months, that doesn't really seem to be the case for Lucid, at least right now. So they look to be in a really tough position. I think we've talked plenty about that, but with these numbers, that it really paints a pretty dire picture for Lucid. Obviously, they're burning cash as this is unfolding. They've got support from the Saudi PIF, Public Investment Fund, that, should give them a decent runway in terms of cash and continued investment potentially. But, this type of a business cannot last for very long. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that comes back next quarter. It'll be interesting to hear their thoughts on the conference call. As a part of the delivery report, they didn't really say any, didn't really give any reason for why production was down so significantly quarter over quarter. So we'll just have to wait and see, what they say on that. Somewhat related, we've got an update here from Alex Potter on Rivian. So he's actually downgraded Rivian last night. They had an overweight rating before, I believe, now downgrading to neutral, basically saying they think Rivian should trade at book value. They view the upside for Rivian only basically occurring if they can really get to a high volume level of production, but basically saying that if the company only wants to sell 400,000 to 700 vehicles per year, the current vertical integration strategy that they're pursuing might not really be effective at that type of a scale. They might just need to get to bigger scale to make that cost effective versus trying to outsource some more things. So Rivian kind of trying to copy Tesla, and we've talked about that, but Tesla had the benefit of not having to compete with Teslas. Lucid, Rivian, all these newer electric vehicle makers, including the legacy automakers' foray into electric vehicles, they've got to compete with Tesla on the market. So it makes things even that much more difficult, plus just the economic environment that we're in right now. So in terms of the book value, talked about that, basically saying that they should trade at book value right now. Their forecasts for Rivian's capital needs indicate that they might need another $4 billion sort of capital infusion by the end of 2025. So with the updates on Lucid, thought interesting to share that on Rivian today as well. All right, then moving on, we do have a couple of updates on SpaceX, or I think just one major update here on SpaceX. We've been talking about the Starship orbital test flight. SpaceX today did get FAA's approval for their launch license for this test flight. So SpaceX then immediately after this tweeted out, targeting as soon as Monday, April 17th for the first flight test of a fully integrated Starship and Super Heavy rocket from Starbase in Texas. So we'll see. All signs so far have pointed to Monday. There are road closure notices and things like that. But Elon did tweet, I have a feeling it might get delayed 3 days. Obviously, that would move it to April 20th, 4/20. So we'll see. I'm not sure exactly what date they are really targeting. It seems like Monday, but again, there could be, delays even if they're not trying to actually intentionally shift that to April 20th. All right, and lastly for today, an interesting update from the Wall Street Journal. They have learned that Elon has created a new company called X.AI Corp. It's incorporated in Nevada. The only listed director is Elon, and then Jared Birchall, who's Elon has obviously done a lot of business with over the years, is listed as the entity's secretary. Apparently they're authorized for sale of 100 million shares for this company, which, it's just what you do when you incorporate a company, get that share count out there. So we'll see if or what comes of this with the X.AI name, and Elon just recently having changed that Twitter's name to X Corp. There seems to be a close correlation in terms of the names there. How much overlap? That would, I guess, remain to be seen, but obviously we'll try to learn a little bit more about this as times go by. Financial Times also had a similar article today, so a couple of entities reporting on this. So definitely something worth keeping an eye on. All right, that will wrap it up for today. I guess that wasn't quite as quick as I thought it would be, but I hope everyone has a great weekend, and make sure you're subscribed and sign up for notifications. You can also find me on Twitter at Tesla Podcast, and we'll see you on Monday for that Monday, the April 17th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.